Hello, everyone. My name is Eric Weiner, and I looked at social assistance in the United States, the evolution from almsgiving during the colonial period to the modern day pursuit of universal health care, with the main dynamic being private charity versus institutional aid. The history of social assistance in the United States can go back to the Puritans, where there was a major divide between the more traditionalist Puritans and the more commerce focused, liberal minded Puritans over inequality and the divine ordinance of that inequality. The poor relief of that era primarily came from the church and other private institutions. Later on, progressives uh, who were basing much of their beliefs on societal structures, on Christian teachings, uh, developed more institutional solutions to issues of social assistance. Reformers like Jane Addams emphasized interclass dependence and established Hull House as a with the intentions of being a crossroads of classes. Today, the state and federal government are directly involved with social assistance in the way of Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and unemployment insurance. The largest next step in the expansion of government assistance would likely be the implementation of universal health care. The traditional Puritan charity work and assistance was not meant to eradicate poverty, only to provide mercy to the poor. From Module 1, we have Puritans like John Winthrop who saw poverty and inequality as all part of God's plan, and that the current existence of the world structures as they were proof of that God ordained structure of inequality. Liberal thought went against these predeterministic notions on who should be rich and who would be poor, with drawing on foundational principles uh, of inequality and inalienable rights that the Declaration of Independence was based on. During the colonial era, assistance to the poor was a matter for local governments, which were heavily intertwined with the church. Uh, this relief could come in the form of direct monetary assistance from the church charity coffers. They could be exempt from taxes or church dues. The poor could also be housed with neighbors, where the community house would house individuals, uh, changing households to lessen the burden on one specific family. But on the as opposed to that intertwined community charity, poor people could also be sold into servitude during the colonial era. Uh, so it shows the inability of these charitable institutions to keep up with the demands and provide meaningful support. Uh, these institutions were quickly overwhelmed with the uptick in immigration and conflicts like King Philip's War uh, brought a major influx of veterans, widows, and orphans that uh, these private institutions just could not keep up with, resulting in the first instance of state aid, with Boston authorities appealing to the General Court of the colony for assistance. With more industrialization and more immigration, the fabric of society changed for America, and the transition from small agrarian-based communities into more urban centers of commerce in the Northeast, focused on trade and manufacturing. Uh, the progressives of this era in the late 19th century and late 19th and early 20th century, later on compared to the industrialization, the progressives based their beliefs on teaching from the gospel, seeing as their duty as Christians to help the poor. One such example from Module 6, we have George Herron, clergyman activist who emphasized the social gospel, which for him meant sociology and theology were inseparable. The gospel lays out the basically the gospel lays out what a good society should look like. However, the progressive Christians weren't Christian zealots and didn't believe in like a theocracy per se. Uh, the Christian, as Herron stated, the Christian constitution of society is not a church. So while the Gospels describe how a good society acts morally, Herron did not believe that morality emanated solely from the church or any religious institution, seeing church as a means to the end of a just society. Jane Addams was heavily critical of the private charity structure and sought to help the poor with their immediate needs, but also to arm them as capable citizens. Hull House was founded to provide relief with money and health services, but also to educate the poor and newly arrived immigrants to better arm them as citizens in the United States. In line with Herron, Addams based her belief on Christian teachings as well as an upbringing in a tight-knit community, but that heavily influenced Christian upbringing was not reflective of wanting a theocracy, same as Herron. Um, Church was a means to an end, not the end. Addams also did not accept a label of socialist or communist, but talked about breaking down societal barriers and saw Hull House as a crossroads for thoughts and experience sharing among classes. While facing down the dual crisis of World War II and the Great Depression, FDR greatly expanded the federal government's capability of enacting social assistance with programs like Social Security, which lifted nearly two-thirds of seniors out of poverty. Unemployment insurance helps workers navigate economic downturns, and SSI provides help to the disabled and orphans. These insurance programs work differently compared to traditional welfare and charity, where there are guaranteed payouts, and insurance incentivizes you to continue to work more and work longer. Uh, while welfare, you can lose benefits for making too much money. Social Security encourages you to work more, and you get more benefit payouts from working more. Um, Insurance keeps you out of poverty. Welfare is designed. Insurance is designed to keep you out of poverty. Welfare is designed to help you when you're already in poverty. FDR was not so focused on redistribution of wealth per se, but sought to guarantee economic security for all Americans from the cradle to the grave. As part of the New Radicals, conservative groups like the Moral Majority Movement rose in opposition to what they saw as dangerous expansion of the federal government and were also horrified by the secularization of American society. Here we see the flip from Christian social assistance being focused on doing good rather than emphasizing the church. We see individuals like Pat Robertson emphasizing the sanctity of the institution of the church and adherence to its teachings. Um, Social Security has been a reoccurring target for these kind of conservatives since its inception. Many conservatives and even some Democrats seek to privatize Social Security due to costs on the federal government. Despite it being a insurance program, conservative politicians often equate Social Security as costly welfare. Despite the success of Social Security in lifting the elderly out of poverty, conservative lobbyists like Grover Norquist would rather shrink the government to the size where we can drown it in a bathtub, as he is quoted as saying. Privatizing Social Security would lower the pool of insured, cost more, and would not be insured by the U.S. government, leaving it open to all kinds of economic downturns. Today, modern progressives advocate for programs like the Child Tax Credit and universal health care. The Child Tax Credit offered a tax break to families with children. It even gave out some of the tax break as direct payments. Um, this legislation effectively cut child poverty in the United States in half, seeing it fall to as little as about 5%. But the lapse in legislation saw childhood poverty jump back up to 12%. Universal healthcare is the next biggest potential step in expanding social assistance. Um, as a lot of research has shown, Americans pay more than any other wealthy industrialized nation on their healthcare, and more than 45,000 Americans die every year from a lack of healthcare coverage. Um, Universal healthcare, despite what some conservatives will say, universal healthcare was intended to be included with Social Security from the get-go, but lobbying from all kinds of the American Medical Association, unions, all kinds of interest groups stymied that. When broadly looking at the American system of social assistance, we see that it is majorly a conflict between voluntary charity and institutional assistance. Social assistance in the United States originated out of Christian charity structures and expanded to larger governing structures due to conflicts like influxes in immigration and King Philip's War, uh, producing veterans, widows, and orphans. While heavily tied to gospel learning, the progressives' ideal of improving social assistance were not based on building a theocracy. Instead, places like Hull House were intended to break down societal barriers and encourage cooperation. Later on, the New Deal greatly expanded American social assistance with the intent of providing economic security for all Americans from the cradle to the grave. Uh, new the new radical Christian conservatives reject these progressive notions that of a harmonious secular society without poverty. They see insurance and welfare as one and the same, and they lobby for the privatization of them. For progressives, social assistance was intended to eradicate poverty where possible, and public programs would be the most effective in these pursuits. For conservatives, poverty and hardship were ordained by God, and assistance was best suited to come from private institutions like churches. Thank you all and have a great summer.